in China, the line between fiction and reality is fading away, thanks to megaprojects that once seemed to exist only on blueprints. It could be a suspension bridge hanging at record heights over a deep gorge, or an endless highway cutting right through a desert known as the Sea of Death. Nature built up almost insurmountable barriers. Chinese engineers responded with marvels that defy the limits of architecture and physics. Advanced materials, automated technology, the ambition to conquer the most unforgiving terrains. All of this has turned the country into a construction site of the Fuwan Olemcha. Welcome to a journey decoding an unimaginable China, a place where engineering wonders are built to confront and conquer nature. Yaxi Expressway. The Yaxi Expressway does not just run through the terrain, it climbs straight up into one of the most rugged mountain regions of Sichuan. In just 46 kilometers, the elevation suddenly jumps from around 600 to 3,200 meters. On one side is a sheer cliff, on the other is a deep abyss. To keep the incline safe enough for driving, the construction crew could not build in a straight line. They made the highway loop back inside the mountain through a double spiral tunnel system. Then it launches back into the air along the entire 240-kilometer route. There are about 270 bridges and 25 tunnels. More than half of the journey barely touches the ground. One of the most standout structures is the Ganhaizi Bridge. The bridge spans a deep valley carrying traffic hundreds of meters above the ground below. Ganhaizi is not just a bridge. It is proof of how the Yaxi Expressway turned a journey once considered impossible into reality. Shenzhen Zhongshan Link. The Shenzhen Zhongshan Link crosses one of the busiest shipping lanes in China. Yet, the structure still had to span the Pearl River estuary without blocking the ships below. One end of the route sits right next to the Shenzhen airport. Therefore, the structure could not reach too high, while simultaneously having to withstand strong winds in the open sea. The main span of the bridge stretches out to 1.666 metres, wide enough for massive ships to pass, yet low enough not to exceed safety limits. However, just one bridge was not enough. The highway was also forced to change its shape. It runs high up, drops down onto an artificial island, and then disappears into an undersea tunnel. From inside a car, this journey feels like crossing multiple worlds in just a few minutes. And that is when you understand why the Shenzhen-Zhongshan link is considered one of the most ambitious transportation projects in the world. Jiangsu Rudong offshore wind farm in Rudong, Jiangsu province. The challenge is no longer about connecting two shores, but turning wind power into electricity. This is a place where hundreds of turbines stretch all the way to the horizon. Engineers began by driving steel foundations deep into the mud on the ocean floor. After that, offshore cranes lifted the tower sections, nacelles, and blades into their exact positions one by one. Each phase had to be completed in an extremely short amount of time, before the tide turned, before the wind picked up, and before the sea surface became too dangerous. Further offshore is a converter station weighing around 22,000 tons, where electricity from the entire turbine cluster is collected. This energy is then transmitted back to the mainland through an underwater cable system. Qingdao Bay Bridge. Reaching straight across Jiangsu Bay, the Qingdao Bay Bridge looks like a highway hovering over the sea. Down below are over 5,000 board piles driven deep into the bay floor. They keep the entire structure standing strong against waves, wind, and constantly shifting tides. Halfway through the journey, the bridge suddenly splits at the Hongdao interchange. Driving lanes redirect right over the water, creating a massive concrete network. When crossing the shipping channel, the roadway is elevated by cable-stayed towers nearly 149 metres tall. The clearance below is large enough for ships to keep passing through. Sitting in the driver's seat, you will see endless ocean stretching out on both sides. The wind sweeps across the car. The waves roll below, while the road just keeps rushing straight ahead. Yangshan Deep Water Port. Offshore from Shanghai, the Yangshan Deep Water Port spreads out among small rocky islands, over a body of water with no flat land to build a port on. Close to the city, the water is too shallow for massive cargo ships to approach, but the area with the necessary depth is located more than 30 kilometers away from the mainland. So, the construction crew brought land out to the sea. They dredged the shipping channel down to about 15 meters, filled in the gaps between the islands, and created giant storage yards right in the middle of the ocean. Today, ships dock right next to rows of towering cranes. Every single shipping container is lifted off the deck, moved into the yard, and stacked into endless blocks. In the automated zone, unmanned vehicles keep transporting goods around the clock. And that is when Yangshan reveals its true nature. A logistics hub built up from a place where there used to be nothing but the sea. Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. Stretching 55 kilometres across the Pearl River estuary, the Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge is an entire system consisting of viaducts, artificial islands, and an immersed undersea tunnel. At major shipping channels, the structure rises high via 3 cable-stayed spans. Cargo ships can still easily move through the open spaces underneath. But keeping a 6-lane highway stable in open water is a different challenge. Over a distance of dozens of kilometres, every single component had to be connected with almost absolute precision. Near the Hong Kong airport, the route starts to lower. It touches down onto a massive artificial island, then disappears into an underwater tunnel. In just one trip, the entire structure constantly changes shape, turning the water surface into a foundation for one of the largest transportation projects in the region. Three Gorges Dam. Besides blocking a massive river, the Three Gorges Dam also has to control floods on the Yangtze River, generate power on a national scale, and maintain daily shipping operations. Therefore, engineers did not just build a dam stretching 2,309 metres long. and 185 meters high, with a capacity of 22.5 gigawatts. They also built a 2-lane, 5-tier shiplock system, and then added a ship lift that can elevate 3,000-ton vessels over a maximum height difference of 113 meters, just like riding an elevator. From inside the cabin, you hear the steel doors close and watch the water level rise step by step. That is also when you realize that Three Gorges has forced the entire Yangtze River to operate to the rhythm of humanity. Xiaolangdi Dam. Forget about the Three Gorges Dam. Your next destination is the Xiaolangdi Dam, which has to face an even harder to control enemy, the silt of the Yellow River. Regular dams only need to hold back water, but here, if the sediment is not dealt with, the reservoir will gradually be choked off by the silt itself. The most memorable feature actually lies deep inside the mountain. A network of 15 tunnels serves to discharge floods, flush out sand, and generate electricity. The whole system turns controlling the flow into a matter of reshaping the riverbed. The 1.8 gigawatt capacity is only part of the story. When the regulating gates open, muddy yellow water roars through the concrete, dragging along silt and violently throwing up white foam. Dunhuang Molten Salt Solar Plant. During the day, the sunlight is practically endless. But when night falls, that energy source disappears too. That is the paradox of the desert. And the Dunhuang Molten Salt Solar Plant was built to solve this exact problem. On the edge of the Gobi Desert, a 100 megawatt solar thermal tower complex was erected. Right in the middle is the absorption tower, surrounded by a mirror field covering more than 1.38 million square meters. Over 10,000 heliostats rotate to track the sun. They concentrate the light onto a single point, heating the salt to extreme temperatures. This heat can be stored for about 11 hours, enough for the plant to keep generating power long after the sky has gone dark. Atuleer cliff ladders. Unlike the structures you have just gone through, the Atuleer cliff ladders pose a completely different challenge: how to bring people up and down a village located on top of a cliff. In the past, villagers had to cling to ladders made of rattan and wood. Today, they have been replaced by a system of 2,556 steel steps erected along the precarious mountainside. To complete this walkway, they used about 120 tons of steel and nearly 30,000 shifts of labour. It turned an impossible path into a route that can be used every day. When you grab the handrail and climb up, the metal is cold under your hands. The wind sweeps across the mountain slope. The empty space opens straight up underneath. That is when you understand that in Atuleer, these stairs are not just a path. They are the lifeline of the entire village. Qinghai Tibet Railway. If there is a place where a railway seemingly cannot exist, it is the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. Thin air, harsh terrain, permafrost expanding and shrinking underground. Every single kilometre of track becomes an engineering challenge. And yet, in the middle of that seemingly impossible land, the Qinghai Tibet Railway was still built. The project is 1,956 kilometres long, with the highest point hitting 5,072 metres. About 960 kilometres sit at an elevation over 4,000 metres, while nearly 550 kilometres cross over long-standing permafrost. The problem was not just connecting 2 points with a railway, engineers also had to keep the structure stable, while the foundation underneath was constantly shifting, all while maintaining operations in an environment where even humans find it hard to breathe. South-North Water Transfer Project. The South-North Water Transfer Project started from an imbalance that lasted for centuries. Southern China has an abundant water supply. Meanwhile, the north faces severe scarcity. Instead of accepting that limitation, China decided to alter the flow on a near continental scale. This is not a single canal, but a system of 3 massive diversion routes, bringing resources from southern river basins to the cities and industrial zones in the north. When meeting the Yellow River, the flow does not stop. It goes through 2 tunnels, tunneling right under the riverbed. Each tunnel has an inner diameter of about 7 meters and reaches a maximum depth of 35 meters. After that, the water appears on the other bank and continues its journey north. Here, the supply no longer depends purely on rain or flood seasons. It is guided, controlled, and operated as part of the national strategic infrastructure. Guoliang Tunnel Road. The village of Guoliang sits behind the cliffs of the Taihang Mountains. In the past, the only way out to the outside world was a vertical trail hugging the rocky slopes. The locals did not wait for a major project. They grabbed hammers and chisels and carved a path straight through the mountain themselves. From there, the Guoliang Tunnel Road was born. The outer face of the tunnel was opened up into a series of windows looking right out over the abyss. They let light inside, revealing the very solid rock that the road had to cut through. From inside a car, you will see the light flickering through each window. On one side is a rock wall, on the other is open space dropping straight down into the valley. Few places show the sheer scale of this project as clearly as viewing it from the outside. A long cut across the mountainside, clinging to the edge of the cliff among towering rocks. Duge Bridge. Between the 2 cliffs of the Baihetan River, the Duge Bridge suspends a highway deck at a height of more than 565 meters above the river. The bridge is 1,341 meters long with a main span of 720 meters. The cable-stayed system pulls the route straight from one mountainside to the other, instead of forcing cars to plunge to the bottom of the gorge and then climb back up. When you drive across the bridge, the scale of the scenery begins to change. The mountain slopes quickly fall away from the windows. The river below shrinks into a thin streak between the rocks and the forest. On cloudy days, the entire bridge deck sits above the fog layer. Cars are still driving on a normal highway, but beneath the wheels is an empty space, equivalent to a building over 180 stories tall. Pingtang Bridge. In Pingtang, the biggest problem is not a river. It is the vast open space swallowing the entire karst valley. To get across it, the construction team built a 2,135-metre cable-stayed bridge with 3 main towers. The largest span reaches 550 metres, while the middle tower rises up to 332 metres. The 3-tower design helps distribute the load over a long span, while keeping the bridge deck about 300 metres above the valley floor. The strongest identifying feature is the diamond-shaped centre tower. From a distance, it stands straight up among the lower mountain ranges like a landmark marking the exact middle of the open void. Aizhai Bridge. You just left a dark tunnel. Only a few seconds later, the car is already suspended in mid-air above the Dunhuang Grand Canyon. That is the signature experience of the Aizhai Bridge. The bridge goes straight from the tunnel portal on this side to the tunnel portal on the other, creating the famous tunnel-to-tunnel design. The main span is 1,176 metres long. The road deck sits about 355 metres above the canyon floor. Thanks to this, the highway does not need to drop in elevation, loop around the mountainside and climb back up. There is no long transition section. There is no time to get used to the height. The tunnel entrance just ends, and the road immediately makes a leap of over 1 kilometre across the mountains. Sidu River Bridge. Before the Sidu River Bridge appeared, bringing materials to both sides of the gorge was already a challenge. Pulling the very first cable across the deep abyss was even harder. The structure is 1,365 metres long, with a main span of 900 metres. The road surface sits about 560 metres higher than the lowest point below. From above, the suspension cable system forms two curves between the mountain slopes. The bridge section runs straight across the open air with almost no support points anywhere in the deep gorge. The further back you step, the clearer the overall scale becomes. Two towers stand right at the edge of the mountains, connected by a 900-metre suspension span, while the valley opens up wide down below. Today, cars can cross this place in just a few minutes. But the very first step to creating that route used to be just a single cable shot straight through the sky. Tianmen Mountain Road. Looking from above, the Tianmen Mountain Road seemingly has no straight sections. The entire road constantly folds back on itself along the slopes of Tianmen Mountain. The route is about 10.77 kilometres long, climbing from an elevation of nearly 200 metres up to about 1,300 metres. To control the incline, it has to use exactly 99 curves, most of which are tight hairpin turns. Just as you steer the car back on track, another curve pops up right ahead. The cliff switches sides. The deep abyss opens up and then quickly disappears behind the car window. Here, the 99 curves were not made just to make the journey more dramatic. They are the absolute only way the road could ever reach the summit. Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge. The Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge does not hide the empty space below. It puts the entire deep gorge right underneath the feet of pedestrians. The bridge is 430 metres long, about 6 metres wide, and suspended nearly 300 metres above the bottom of the canyon. The deck is pieced together from 99 transparent glass panels. This structure turns crossing the bridge into a psychological hurdle. You know the glass is strong enough to hold the weight, but your eyes still look right through it, straight down to the rocks and forest below. The first few steps are usually very slow. Some people cling to the handrails, others just stare straight ahead to avoid seeing the sheer drop under their shoes. Then the feeling starts to change. Once you have gone far enough that it is not easy to turn back, the bridge forces you to keep moving forward to the other side. Taklamakan Desert Highway. The Taklamakan Desert Highway is 522 kilometers long, cutting right through one of the largest sandy regions in China. The route is almost perfectly straight in the middle of the desert. There are no cities on either side, no mountains, just yellowish grey sand dunes rolling one after another all the way to the horizon. From above, the road surface shows up like a thin black streak splitting the empty space in half. In some sections, it hides behind mounds of sand and then reappears far off in the distance. When driving through here, you will see a belt of green trees running parallel to the highway. It is not big enough to change the desert, but it is strong enough to slow the wind and stop the sand from swallowing the road whole. Baihetan Dam. The Baihetan Dam squeezes one of the largest hydroelectric systems in the world right into the narrow canyon of the Jiangsu River. The 289-metre high arch wall holds back a massive volume of water upstream. But the part visible above ground is only the outer shell of the project. Inside the two mountain slopes are underground power stations housing 16 generating units. Each unit has a capacity of 1 gigawatt, bringing the total installed capacity to 16 gigawatts. Placing the equipment deep inside the mountain helps free up space on the surface, while simultaneously using the surrounding solid rock to protect the power generation system. Jiangsu Wind Farm. In the Gobi region along the Yaxi corridor, rows of turbines appear before any major city even comes into view. The wind currents here are much stronger and more stable than in many other areas. The massive, wide-open space also allows the system to be deployed on a scale that a standard wind farm would struggle to reach. The Zhuhai complex was developed with a capacity of around 10 gigawatts. Instead of clustering in a single spot, the power generation zones are spread out across the arid land and then connected to long-distance transmission corridors. Standing near the base of a tower, you can hear the blades slicing through the air in slow, heavy beats. But from afar, thousands of white pillars are reduced to thin lines, stretching all the way to the horizon. A landscape once considered too empty to exploit now operates as a colossal power plant with no roof. Fuzhou Xiamen High-Speed Railway. Along the Fujian coast, there is absolutely no room left to lay down a normal high-speed railway. Mountains press in tightly on one side. The other side is made up of bays, estuaries, and waterways opening out to the sea. Therefore, the Fuzhou-Xiamen line has to constantly switch between bridges, tunnels, and sea-crossing sections. The route is 277 kilometres long, with bridges and tunnels making up about 85% of the entire journey. Nearly 20 kilometres of track are laid directly on structures crossing the water surface. The design speed of 350 kilometres per hour makes every change happen incredibly fast. The train car barely leaves a dark tunnel before the glare of the sea floods through the windows. A few seconds later, the mountains close off the view again. The journey between Fuzhou and Xiamen therefore feels like a montage cut together from rock, sea, and concrete. Dunhuang Grand Bridge. The Danyang Kunshan Grand Bridge does not impress with a sky-high span or a massive cable-stayed tower. Its sheer scale lies in the fact that it simply refuses to end. The viaduct stretches for about 164.8 kilometres across the Yangtze River Delta. Down below are rice paddies, lakes, canals, local roads, and residential areas sitting on soft soil. Instead of placing the tracks directly onto a subsidence-prone area, the railway is elevated by thousands of bridge piers. This structure creates a perfectly stable flat surface for bullet trains, while also reducing the number of intersections with the traffic below. Through the window, the scenery seems to just drift beneath the train wheels, but you rarely ever realise where the bridge begins or ends. That is the true success of the project. A record-breaking bridge that practically disappears from the experience of anyone travelling over it. Hong Kong International Airport. Hong Kong once lacked the most basic requirement for building a large-scale international airport, a piece of land wide and flat enough. The solution was Chek Lap Kok. 2 small islands were levelled, expanded and connected through land reclamation, creating a brand new surface right offshore. The airport opened in 1998, covering an area of about 1,255 hectares. 2 3,800 metre long runways allow wide-body aircraft to operate in an area with strong winds and high maritime traffic. When the plane drops in altitude, the entire airport appears like a man-made strip of land set right in the middle of the water. The runways, terminals and taxiways stretch all the way to the edge of the sea. Hong Kong could not find a suitable place to build an airport. The city simply created that place itself. Zhongshan Cross Sea Bridges. Getting to Zhongshan used to mean waiting for ferries, relying on the weather and crossing multiple separated straits. The Zhongshan Cross Sea Bridges changed that journey with a bridge chain nearly 50 kilometres long. The route uses multiple small islands as transit points, linking the mainland to the main islands step by step. Each section had to handle a different condition. In some places it is wide open water. In others it sits right next to shipping lanes. Some sections have to withstand brutal crosswinds on the open sea. The most prominent is the Tibet Bridge, with a main span 1,650 metres long, crossing over one of the toughest maritime channels in the region. Along the road, the scenery changes constantly. The bridge touches down on an island, runs across a short stretch of dirt, and then shoots right back out over the sea. Zhongshan is still an archipelago, but the boundary between the mainland and the islands is now connected by an unbroken strip of road. Every place we have just gone through was a problem that seemed impossible to solve. But China turned it into reality through scale, engineering, and sheer audacity. Which project impressed you the most? Do you think these are miracles of the construction industry or an overly deep interference with nature? Leave a comment down below. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you do not miss out on the next heart-pounding journeys. See you next time.